The last time we worked with using our quadratic formula, I made sure that your problems worked out really well. But there are three special situations that you need to be aware of. The first is that when you use your quadratic formula, you have to have quadratic equations that are in standard form and they equal 0. So the first situation you might come across is equations that aren't in standard form or don't equal 0. So we know how we can put equations into standard form and how we can make them equal 0. Like in this case, I would just subtract 9 on both sides. And I just remember I have to combine my like terms here. So I'm going to get x squared minus 6x minus 16 equals 0. Once you have your standard form equation, you just go ahead and use your quadratic formula like we did the other day. So my a value is going to be this coefficient here of 1. My b term is negative 6 right here. And my c term is negative 16 right here on the end. So once we have that, we would write down our formula and we would plug in our numbers for a, b, and c. So negative b is going to be negative 6 plus or minus the square root of b squared, so negative 6 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is negative 16, all over 2a, so 2 times 1. And then remember, you're going to do the math that's under your square root symbol first. So just this, we're going to leave our square root symbol there, and we're just going to do this part underneath it. And when we do that, we get 6, because negative 6 is positive 6, plus or minus the square root of 100 divided by 2. Next, we're going to do our square root of 100. Square root of 100 is 10, so we get 6 plus or minus 10 divided by 2. And then we're going to solve each of these, one for the plus 10 value and one for the minus 10. So 6 plus 10 is 16. 16 divided by 2 is 8, so one of our solutions here is 8. And then we'll go and we'll do 6 minus 10, which is negative 4. Negative 4 divided by 2 means my other solution is negative 2. Okay, so that's one of our special scenarios. The second one is going to be a situation where what you get when you take the square root is not a perfect square. So let's start this problem and I'll show you what I mean. So we've got our a value, which is 3. We've got our b value, which is 10. And we've got our c value, which is negative 12. So we're going to take these numbers and we're going to put them into our formula. So negative 10 plus or minus the square root of 10 squared minus 4 times a, which is 3, times c, which is negative 12, all divided by 2 times 3, which is 6. So again, we're going to do this part under our square root symbol. So 10 squared minus 4 times 3 times negative 12. And when we get that, what we're going to get is negative 10 plus or minus the square root of 244. So my next step is to take this square root. Okay. Now every time we've done these problems before and we've taken our square root, we've gotten a whole number. Okay. That's not going to be the case most of the time. Most of the time when you take a square root, you're going to get a decimal. So let me show you how we do square roots on these calculators. Remember, your square root key is right here, which means it's our second command. So we're going to hit second, and we're going to go here, and you'll see up on the top we get our radical symbol there. And then underneath, we're going to put our 244, and we hit enter. If when you take your square root, you get a big long decimal like this, here's your good news. All you do at that point is you're done. Okay, you just leave this as your answer, plus or minus the square root of 244. Now, if you take your square root and you get a whole number, or even if you get a nice decimal, like let's say it was 15.5, then we would go and do what we did over here, where we would find the two solutions. But anytime you get like a big giant decimal, just leave your answer like this. This is our radical form, and we're just going to leave it like that. So the third scenario is where we might have no solutions. Because remember, if you graph a quadratic equation and it never crosses your x-axis, then there are no solutions. So we have to be able to identify times when we have no solutions if we're using our quadratic formula. So again, we need an equation that's equal to 0. So we'll start by making the standard form equal to 0. I'm going to get x squared plus 3x plus 4 equals 0. And then my a value is 1, my b value is 3, and my c value is 4. So again, I'm going to take these values, I'm going to plug them in. Oops. Where is it? It's here somewhere. There it is. So negative b, so negative 3, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c divided by 2 over 1. So again, all of this is the same. We're going to start by taking this solution right here, 3 squared minus 4 times 1 times 4. And when we do that, we get negative 7. Now, let's go back to our calculator. Sorry, this is going to be kind of off. I'll move it this way so you can see this problem. If I do the square root, so remember second square root of negative 7, I get an error message. The reason I get an error message is you can't take a square root of a negative number. Because remember, the only way to get a negative number is to have a negative times a positive. And the only way to have a square root is to have the same thing. So it has to be a positive times a positive or a negative times a negative. So when you get a value underneath your radical symbol, your square root symbol, that is negative, once you get to this point, you just stop and you write no solutions. And there are no solutions because you cannot find the square root of a negative number.